Good evening, friends, and welcome to Sleepy Time Tales, a podcast aimed at helping you to get a good night's sleep. Do you find your mind plagued with the stresses of modern life, especially when the lights are out and you're trying to get a restful night? Does your spinning mind keep you awake? Follow my voice down the path towards a good night's rest. Listen to me tell a story that will keep your mind from wandering to your daytime problems. The ones you can't solve right now will be easier to solve well rested. Listen to my voice and allow yourself to drift, following the twists and turns of the story, but slowly letting go and drifting into sleep. This show is brought to you with the help of a whole bunch of listeners. It's not an exactly expensive thing to run, but these people do help me cover the costs and make sure I can justify the time and the expenses that I incur helping people to sleep. So I do want to give a shout out to everyone who's currently backing Sleepy Time Tales on Patreon. Had a whole bunch of new people sign up last week, and I appreciate that very much. And there's some people that have been with me for a good long while, and I really do want to give them a shout out because I haven't done so in a while. So I'd like to thank Ali Fuller, Jess, Nicola Sharp, Win, Kat Combs and Michael McHale, and Nova, who are backing Sleepy Time Tales at $5 a month. Ali and Jess have been doing so for quite a while, and Win has signed up again recently after backing the show for a good while as well. So thank you all very much for you doing your part in making sure that I can keep doing this, because I think it is quite important. So if you are finding that the show is beneficial and would like to help me to grow it, because I'm covering costs now, which is great, but I'd like to do more to reach out to people and do some more marketing and outreach and stuff. And to be honest, in the long run, I really would love to do Sleepy Time Tales full time. That's going to take some doing, but thanks to exchange rates, not as much as it would be if I lived in like America or something. So if I ever do get to that level, then I can put some serious thought into going into Sleepy Time Tales full time. I could do more, promote it, I could put out more episodes, and I've got big ideas, things that I just can't do with the time that I have. I've had some time during lockdown to put more thought into things that I'd love to do, and with the help of you listeners, I think we can achieve something great together. So if you are inclined to help and have the means and are willing to, then I would like you to consider joining up on the Patreon. Go to patreon.com/sleepytimetales or patron.sleepytimetales.net. Those go to the same direction. And look at the benefits that are available at either $2 or $5 a month, because those are the levels that I have at the moment. Just help me to keep this thing going. Also, besides the Patreon, there are a couple of other ways you can support the show. I've got everything linked in the show notes as well. I do have an Audible trial, so if you sign up there, I get a little bit of money, as well as you get a free audiobook to keep and a 30-day free trial of the Audible service. I am sponsored by betterhelp.com, which is an online mental health service, which is fantastic. And as Sleepy Time Tales listeners, if you use the link that's in the show notes, you get a 10% discount on your first month. And there's also a tip jar on the website. So even if you only have a little bit to spare, once off every now and then, throw something in there, and everything's appreciated. Like I said, exchange rates mean that even a couple of dollars actually are materially beneficial. I don't want to go into too much about this stuff tonight, so that's that. I do, of course, want to shout out the music, as I always do. The song is Un Désert by the artist Kumiko. Their music is available on the Free Music Archive. I've linked their website in the show notes. It may be a bit confusing because the website is not to Kumiko, but it's somebody who works under various different names, and the Kumiko is a specific style of music that they do. And they've got some very cool stuff. And if you're a podcaster or a creative of some sort, most of their stuff is public domain. You don't even need to shout them out, but I just feel like I need to, because it's such an important part of the show. So I'd like to thank them, and I'd like to thank you for listening up to here, and back to the story. So what exactly is Sleepy Time Tales? What is it for? It's a strange idea. After all, it's a podcast that you're supposed to fall asleep to. But lack of sleep is a health crisis in the 21st century, and this is a podcast that is intended to help those that it can to get a restful night. Do you find yourself lying awake at night, with your mind spinning and your emotions in turmoil with anxieties of 21st century life? Do you wake up in the middle of the night and find yourself not quite able to doze back off at 3 a.m.? I'm here to help. My name is Dave, and I'm your narrator, here to help you into a restful night. I'm someone who has struggled to sleep ever since I was a baby. My parents had sleepless nights with me for many years, and even once I got old enough not to bother them anymore, I always struggled to sleep. It was only fairly recently, actually, that I discovered the tendency for droning voices, particularly male ones, to act almost like a sedative for me, like some kind of tranquilizer. I discovered that when I was listening to podcasts at night when I couldn't sleep, and I'd suddenly find myself jerking awake, having missed everything I was trying to listen to. So I started actually listening to some podcasts about previously interesting topics to help me sleep on purpose, and eventually I discovered that there are some out there actually for the specific purpose. I tried out a couple, and they worked very well for me, and I tried recommending them to other people. But I found that for various reasons, other people often didn't enjoy them. Sometimes they didn't like the narrator's voice, or they didn't like the themes, or that sort of thing. So I thought to myself, I've got a boring, deep, drony voice and a taste for sometimes boring stories. Let me see if I can do something to try to reach out and help people. And that's where Sleepy Time Tales was born. Every episode starts with this long intro. There's a little bit of promotional bit up at the front, but most of it serves a couple of very specific purposes to listeners, to all listeners who've been listening for various lengths of time. Now, obviously, if this is the first time discovering the show, I need to make a case to you and explain to you why I think listening to Sleepy Time Tales will benefit you. And if you've been with the show for a while, what a lot of people do is they use this intro where I'm not really saying anything particularly interesting, even by my usual standards. This is part of the sort of process. This is the chance where they get ready to sleep, prepare their space, and prepare themselves. What I'm aiming to do here is I'm trying to get us to build a space together, a sort of mental nest that I can help you cuddle into and get a good night's sleep. As far as I know, there's a couple of different ways to engage with the show. For me, I need something to focus on. I need a story or an event that lets me keep my mind on something specific, on a point or a plot or something, to stop my mind spinning out into stress and anxiety. I need to focus just enough not to resist the embrace of a night's sleep when it comes for me. Now, for other people, it may be something a little bit more primal. Maybe it's almost like white noise. People these days have white noise machines, or they listen to the sounds of rain or the rivers or the ocean, or some people maybe just a dude with a boring, drony voice is just the ticket. Whatever the story is, however you engage with it rather, is up to you. It's I'm here for you, and I'm here to help you in whatever way you need. Tonight's story is quite a different one. I've realized this is actually something I've bumped up the list a bit because I've realized that I've done a lot of high society stories. I think Project Gutenberg seems to be full of stories about nobles and rich people and their lives. So I thought I'd jump into something a little bit different tonight. A story about a carnival horse captain. So the story is the story of Captain, the horse with the human brain, about a very intelligent, well-trained horse, and what sort of his story. This is actually mostly the intro, talking about the author's first encounter with Captain. I do have to warn you, if you go back and look up the story, as often happens with 19th century and early 20th century stories, there's some rather astonishing racism early on in his own discussions. So please be warned about that. I actually edited the stuff out because I was not comfortable even saying some of these things. But often with old stories, they very much are a product of their time, and we need to be aware of that and be grateful that we live in better times. But whatever the story is, whether it's a racist person talking about horses or high society stories, it really doesn't matter, because ultimately what the point of the story is what we're trying to do here is just distract your mind. Listen to the story carefully, but not too carefully. Don't fall asleep, and just allow yourself to have a light mental grip on the thread of the tale, just so that when sleep comes for you, you don't resist. Now, obviously, I'm hoping that you're asleep before I get to the end of the episode, but it's important that you don't feel pressurized. It may not work on the first night if this is your first time with us. I do recommend that if you've just discovered the show now, you give it at least one or two episodes, or 2 or 3 episodes rather, to just figure out if it's for you or not. It's very possible I'm not. I'm sure there's a lot of people that listen to 2 or 3 and move on to something else. But I'm also equally sure that there's a lot of people that find the whole idea a little bit strange, but then stick around just long enough to get over that initial hump of the strangeness of the idea of listening to some dude draining in your ear. It's also possible that 1 episode isn't long enough for you. I know there's at least one listener who listens to 2 or 3 episodes a night. Even if ultimately it's not really helping them sleep, it still helps create a restful mindset for them so that they can just relax, even if not necessarily doze and sleep. But whatever you do, it's very important that as you listen, you try to relax. If you're new to the show and prone to late nights lying staring at the ceiling, it may take a while, even a few days, for this to work for you. So queue up a few episodes or just run through the backlog. What I do with the sleep podcast is I just let it stream all night. I lie down in the dark with my earbuds in and let it run. Often lately I wake up at 3 a.m. and that's always been a challenge for me, because you're sort of not quite awake, not quite asleep. You don't even know if you are awake, but you are, the fact is. And the stream is still running, so I just pop my earbuds in and I let the voices waft me back to sleep. Sometimes I wake up about 30 minutes before my alarm goes. Usually what I do in that case is I just carry on listening and I'm right back to sleep again. Let me tell you that those 30 minutes can be the best part of my night, as pointless as it may seem. There's something about allowing yourself complete relaxation right before the alarm that is just deeply, deeply satisfying. And so you have the basic idea. You relax and you lie in the dark, and while you do that, I'll tell you a tale. So relax, dear listener. My nighttime friend who has elected to lie in the dark, listening to my voice. You will always be safe with me. I'm here to help you relax, to improve your life in a small way, or maybe not so small. People don't sleep very well these days, and it really does make their lives harder. So I'm here to do my small part to help you in a big way, to help you to face tomorrow and the day after well rested and better able to cope and process. I believe very strongly in the benefits of kindness. I want to be kind to you. I want to share kindness with you. And it's very important that I need you to be kind to yourself. Don't beat yourself up or rebuke yourself over not sleeping. Don't get tense if you just can't get yourself over the edge of sleep, even with me here in your ears trying to help. Frustration is one of the greatest enemies of a good night's sleep. The intention with this podcast is to short-circuit that frustration, to distract the feeling we get when we blame ourselves for not being able to let go and drift into the dark. So take a breath. Forgive the fact that you can't sleep and let my voice wash over you. Take another breath. Imagine the warm darkness rising up, inviting you to sleep into a better life starting tomorrow. And if you can't let go, just forgive yourself. Forgive yourself and we can try again tomorrow. If you've had a life of insomnia, sleep is something like an enemy. But it's not your enemy. It's a natural process that we've been pulled away from by stress and life and supposed progress that shines bright lights in our eyes at all hours. So I'm here to work with you, to create a safe space, a cocoon in which you can curl up and allow nature to take its course. So if you're still with me, thank you for staying. If you're already asleep, we'll chat again soon. And of course, you aren't hearing me, except maybe in a dream. The Story of Captain, The Horse with the Human Brain, by George Wharton James. 1917, The Radiant Life Press, Pasadena, California. With cordial greeting, George Wharton James. Dedication. To all horses patiently serving man, to all mankind human enough to love horses, who gratefully care for them in return for their services and who earnestly strive to gain a better understanding of them. These papers are cordially dedicated by one who aims to be the friend of all living things. Introduction. Early in the year 1915, I was called to lecture on California and the West in the beautiful Sunset Theater of the Southern Pacific Building at the San Francisco Exposition. In taking a survey of the zone, I was soon attracted to a gigantic horse in process of manufacture out of wood and plaster, and a placard before it indicated that a trained horse would soon be shown here. Being fond of animals, naturally, and having seen and read considerably of trained horses, I was ready for the first opening of the show, and there was introduced to Captain, the educated horse, or as he has been termed, the horse with the human brain. My opinions as to the quality of Captain's intelligence I have recorded later, but his first performance was a delight to me. His appearance was pleasing, he looked well cared for, contented, happy, and willing to go through his exhibition. There was none of the holding back, the whipping, the sharp orders, the ugly looks one so generally sees on the faces of trained animals when they are being put through their tricks. Most of these poor creatures show so manifestly that they are trapped, are made to do what they do not like, and that they resent it, that I seldom can tolerate the sight of their anger and humiliation. For that is clearly what nearly every animal reveals to me at these exhibitions. Here, on the other hand, was an animal that enjoyed his work. He treated it as fun, just as my own Arab colt treats a free run, and then being led into his corral and being petted. After a little pleasantry, his master asked him to count the number of ladies on the front row. Captain's eyes at once began at one end, followed the row down to the other end, and by pawing he told the number. Several similar questions were asked, as for instance, how many gentlemen in the second row, how many women along the aisle, how many girls or boys in the second or third rows, etc. And in every case, Captain gave the answer correctly. Then a standard was brought forward containing numbers, to which were attached leather lugs or holders. These were held in the standard or rack and placed without any relative order, and scores of later observations have convinced me that there is no order in which they can be placed that makes any difference to Captain. Here he showed his familiarity with numbers, bringing from the rack any one called for. Then tests in arithmetic were applied, such as the addition of numbers as 9 plus 6 plus 7. Captain at once picked out the figure 2, and then after dropping it, picked it up and showed it again. Subtraction was equally well performed, and multiplication up to 12 times 12, and the answers given were invariably correct. In giving the answers, he pawed with one of his front feet, but at the request of his master would give a portion of the answer with one foot and the remainder with another, even alternating in his use of his hind feet. A number of simple commands were now given and questions asked, to which the horse responded with a shake of the head for no, or a nod for yes. He would take a seat when requested, scratch his head with right or left hind foot, show either left or right foot when required, or stamp with right or left foot when required, or stamp with right or left hind foot as asked. When told to pump water, he would swing his head up and down continuously, and he would swing his head to right and left as commanded. When asked to laugh, he opened his mouth and showed his teeth, and he wiggled his ears with equal readiness. When told to put out his tongue, it came out immediately, and when commanded to make a hobby horse of himself, he planted hind feet firmly and then proceeded to stretch himself by planting his forefeet as far ahead as he could. He was then required to make a corkscrew of himself and, placing all 4 feet together, moved around in corkscrew motion. At the command reverse, he immediately went in the opposite direction. Then came an exhibition of Captain's recognition of colors. A rack containing 10 or 15 colored cloths was placed before the audience. The horse was asked to go and pick out, say, the third lady in the second row, look at the color of her hat, or shawl, dress, gloves, or other article of apparel, and then take up the cloth from the rack which corresponded to the color of the article worn. In this he seldom made mistakes. Now a blindfold exhibition was given. As his master explained, this fully precluded the possibility of any collusion, at least as far as Captain seeing any signal was concerned. The blindfold was a leather mask, held in place by the ears and a supporting and fastening strap, the leather completely covering his eyes. All the various commands of pump, wiggle your ears, laugh, put out your tongue, corkscrew, say yes, no, were given and immediately and correctly responded to. Then Captain was asked to bite his right knee, lift up his left foot, scratch his head with his left rear, or right foot, etc. Numbers were now called for, addition, subtraction, and multiplication required, and the answers beaten out or poured with whatever foot was suggested. Then his memory was tested. A red cloth was tied to his right foreknee and a white one on his left hind leg. As the tying was done, his master carefully cautioned him not to forget. Now for a few minutes he was kept occupied with numbers and then was asked for the white cloth. Afterwards for the red one. In both cases he gave whichever was called for. But it should be noted that in neither case did Mr. Sigsbee give him the command. Someone in the audience was asked to call for whichever colored cloth he desired, and on several occasions I made the request myself. The blindfold was now removed. The exhibition with the cash register then followed. Captain being asked to get a paper dollar, then change it for small silver, when he brought out $50 and 2 quarters. There were many variations of the use of money, to all of which requests he responded with accuracy. Then he was called to the chimes, and the audience was informed that Captain could play Nearer My God to Thee, or the Swanee River, and it could make its choice. The former tune was called for, and Captain played it correctly, as far as the notes were concerned, though the time was not, indeed could not have been followed, as the clapper was moved by an upward thrust of the horse's nose upon a lever. These in the main were his achievements. They delighted, yet at the same time puzzled me. How did he accomplish them? By the kindness of his owner, Mr. W.A. Sigsbee, I was permitted to visit Captain in his stall as often as I chose. As I got to know him better, my interest increased until I decided that I should like to write a story. After talking the matter over with Mr. Sigsbee, he was quite willing, but somehow my year in San Francisco was so crowded that the great exposition closed without this pleasing task being accomplished. The following year we met again, however, at the Panama, California International Exposition in San Diego, and there I seized the time necessary to write the following story. While I cannot say with Homer Davenport that I have been so profoundly interested in horses that at 3 years and 9 months old I drew illustrations of Arab horses, I can say with truth that I have always been interested in any animal that showed any approach to what is generally regarded as human intelligence. I was born and brought up as a good Methodist. God to me was the creator of all things, and however my belief in other matters of religion may have been modified or altered in that particular, I believe as I have ever believed. If then God is the creator of all things, animate and inanimate, Every creature, high or low, is a manifestation of his thought, his care, his love, and all are born, created, of the same spirit, and therefore are akin. To me, this is a truth more powerful than mere logic can ever make it. There is a spirit within me, of the Creator undoubtedly, that bears witness to this truth. Hence I know no difference between the spirit in the horse and that in the man, except in the degree of its outward manifestation. However, my good friend John Burroughs writes, "We know that the animals do not think in any proper sense as we do, or have concepts and ideas because they have no language. Thinking in any proper sense is impossible without language. The language is the concept. Our ideas are as inseparable from the words as form is from substance. We may have impressions, perceptions, emotions without language, but not ideas. The child perceives things, discriminates things, knows its mother from a stranger, is angry or glad or afraid, long before it has any language or any proper concept. Animals know only things through their senses, and this knowledge is restricted to things present in time and space. Reflection, or a return upon themselves in thought, of this they are not capable. Their only language consists of various cries and calls, expressions of pain, alarm, joy, love, anger. They communicate with each other and come to share each other's mental or emotional states through these cries and calls. A dog barks in various tones also, each of which expresses a different feeling in the dog. The lowing and bellowing of horned cattle are expressions of several different things. The crow has many caws and no doubt convey various meanings. The cries of alarm and distress of the birds are understood by all the wild creatures that hear them. A feeling of alarm is conveyed to them, an emotion, not an idea. We evolve ideas from our emotions, and emotions are often begotten by our ideas. A fine spring morning or a prospect from a mountain top makes one glad, and this gladness may take an intellectual form. But without language, this gladness could not take form in ideal concepts. We have only to think of the animals as habitually in a condition analogous to or identical with the unthinking and involuntary character of much of our lives. They are creatures of routine. They are wholly immersed in the unconscious, involuntary nature of which we rise, and above which our higher lives go on. This logic seems complete and unassailable. Yet, nevertheless, there is within me something that is not satisfied. I grant Burroughs the argument and then fall back upon my own inner consciousness, with reasoning somewhat after this line. We do not now know the language of the animals. We do not know whether they have one or not. Their lives seem imprisoned within the dark penthouse of brute life, where no gleam of our kind of intellectual light reaches them. But may it not be that they feel this imprisonment and are striving to escape from it? The Indians have many legends that speak of a time when gods, men, animals, and all nature had a common tongue. May this not be true, or if not of the past, a vision of the natural outgrowth of the future. If God be the Creator, he must comprehend all his creation. As we approximate nearer to him, and Browning asserts that we are all gods, though in the germ, may we not begin to understand more fully the languageless animals? Our acceptance of the Hebraic law as set forth in the Old Testament has made us look upon the animals as created solely for our benefit, ours to use just as we choose. Unfortunately, this power to use is given to those with small modicum of kindness in their disposition, the feeling that they are also within their main rights to misuse the animals. Considering the greatness of the universe and the finiteness of man as compared with the whole, does not this idea seem preposterous? The Buddhist and Hindu religions teach that all life is one, that on its journey from unconsciousness to self-consciousness it passes through all the kingdoms of nature, mineral, vegetable, mollusca, reptilian, bird, animal, human, up to superhuman. They say about this life that it sleeps in the mineral, dreams in the flowers, awakens in the animal, and becomes active in the human. Hence, the Hindu treats the animals as his younger brothers, and the slaughter and abuse of them tolerated and practiced in the West is practically unknown in the East, except where the so-called Western civilization has intruded. This view, too, would transcend the arguments and logic of Burroughs. Then, too, may it not be our privilege to help the animals escape from their dark prison cell into the light of mental exercise? I see no reason why animals should not evolve, ascend in the scale, and develop language, reason, concepts, ideas, as well as man. It is certainly going to do no harm to believe it possible, to hope for it, and to work for it. Love is a great revelator in many things, and the love of man, intelligently exercised in relationship to animals, may be of wonderful help in opening the door of their brute prison houses. Hence I hail every effort, whether of child with its pet, shepherd with his dog, woman with her parrot, or educated scholar with his horses, to find the way that shall help the animal know his kinship with the human. Too long have we assumed there was no crossing the gulf between the animal and the human. Man's assumptions have shut knowledge away from him. Instead of assuming that the horse had no intelligence, why did he not go to work scientifically? Instead of assuming that the horse had no intelligence, why did he not go to work scientifically to find out what he did have? Just as Sir John Lubbock experimented with all kinds of creatures as to their powers of taste, smell, touch, etc., only in a larger and higher way, man might have tested the intelligence of horses and then sought to improve it. There is too much assumption in human beings about most things. Animal instinct and human reason not excluded. What I wish to protest against with emphasis and vigor is the assumption that we know all that there is to know about intelligence, that we know the limits nature herself has placed upon its development, and that all efforts to foster further development are useless. I affirm that we do not know, that we have never, as yet, even tried to know, and that until men with loving, devoted, sympathetic singleness of heart and purpose seek to develop all there is in the mentality of all the lower animals, dogs, cats, deer, as well as horses, shall we begin to have a real foundation for our assumptions upon the subject. I am still simple enough to believe implicitly in the spiritual controller of the universe we call God. I am still enamored of the belief that, as Browning says in Saul, God made all the creatures and gave them our love and fear, to give sign we and they are his children, one family here. Remains claims for the horses an intelligence less than that of the large carnivora, the elephant, or even the ass. Yet he asserts that the emotional life of the horse is remarkable, and that working through the emotions wonderful results of training have been secured. He says it is an affectionate animal, pleased at being petted, jealous of companions, receiving favor, greatly enjoying play with others of its kind, and thoroughly entering into the sport of the hunting field. Horses also exhibit pride in a marked degree, as also do mules, being unmistakably pleased with gay trappings. Now, it is inconceivable that these animals might someday, somehow, find a door open whereby they could enter into the realm of speech. To feel is certainly a large step towards expression, and to my mind the possession of the one power suggests the close proximity of the other. I read with great interest the arguments, as different from the mere assumptions of those who assert that the instinct of animals and the reason of human beings are two separate and distinct things. There is a deep gulf between them which can never be passed by a lower order. I do not believe this. Rather do I hold with Romanes that no distinct line can be drawn between instinct and reason. Whether we look to the growing child or to the ascending scale of the animal life, we find that instinct shades into reason by imperceptible degrees. Instinct certainly involves some kind of mental operation, and by this feature it is clearly distinguished and differentiated from reflex action. One bold difference between instinct and reason, I contend, is that the actions of instinct are uniform, though performed by different individuals of the same species, while reason, however limited in its operations, leads to the performance of individualistic actions, limited to single personalities. Instinct implies mental action directed towards the accomplishment of adaptive movement, antecedent to individual experience without necessary knowledge of the relation between the means employed and the ends attained, but similarly performed under the same appropriate circumstances by all the individuals of the same species. In all these particulars, instinct differs from reason in that it, besides involving a mental constituent and besides being concerned in adaptive action, is always subsequent to individual experience, never acts but upon a definite and often laboriously acquired knowledge of the relation between means and ends, and is very far from being similarly performed under the same appropriate circumstances by all the individuals of the same species. Where there is an intentional adaptation of means to ends, there is clear indication of reason. This adaptation I claim Captain possesses, as distinctively, though of course on a much lower plane than I myself possess it. For instance, when Captain, of his own volition, after finding his groom asleep after being awakened, went to him again and pulled the covers from his bed. That may have been accident the first time. It led to the groom's awakening, arousing, and feeding the horse. Now, was it not conscious adaptation of means to that end when the next morning, on the groom failing to rise and feed him, Captain deliberately went and pulled the bedclothes from him, and has done it ever since? If we contemplate our own mind, we have an immediate cognizance of a certain flow of thoughts or feelings which are most ultimate things, and indeed the only things of which we are cognizant. But in our objective analysis of other or foreign minds, we have no such immediate cognizance. All our knowledge of their operations is derived, as it were, through the medium of ambassadors, those ambassadors being the activities of the organism. Starting from what I know subjectively of the operation of my own individual mind, and the activities which in my own organism they prompt, I proceed by analogy to infer from the observable activities of other organisms what are the mental operations that underlie them. Upon any hypothesis of the development of human or animal intelligence, it is evident that mentality is of a wonderfully varied quality. There is a distinct, though by no means clearly defined, sliding scale of intelligence. It is universal knowledge that a dog shows more intelligence than a frog, and a horse than a turtle. Where the horse's place is in the sliding scale of general intelligence, I do not know. Nor can I tell exactly where Captain should be located in the varying scale of the intelligence of horses in general. But this I do know. He has intelligence and is much superior to that commonly shown by the majority of horses. And I firmly believe, with Captain Sigsbee, that training and discipline have their effect in bringing up the intelligence of the high order of horses. I am decidedly opposed to the assumption that the intelligence of horses is a fixed and immovable mental quantity, that no amount of kindly, sympathetic, and understanding training by thoughtful men will add to or develop what they already possess. I believe, beyond the power of any logical formula to shake my belief, that any constant contact of the soul of man with whatever there is in horses that corresponds to the soul must produce a resulting awakening, quickening, deepening of that soul, something in both man and animal. It is in this light, therefore, that what I write of Captain's human intelligence must be understood. He is developing. He has awakened so far. He has begun the upward journey. The more he is educated, the nearer the true resemblance to human intelligence will he display. If in any way these pages help forward the day of closer sympathy between man and his lesser or younger brothers and sisters, I shall be amply repaid for the labor of writing them. George Wharton James, The Exposition, San Diego, Christmas, 1916. Captain's own story. I was born on June 8, 1905, on the farm of Judge J. H. Cartwright in Oregon, Illinois. My mother's name was Roby and my father's Sidney. While I was a little colt, the judge called me Sid Bell. He used to come to the barn and look me over and recount what he called my points to his friends. And when I was in the pasture running to and fro, kicking up my heels and thoroughly enjoying myself, he would stand looking on, apparently thinking very hard. One day the groom tied me to my mother's side and the judge drove her out over the road, and he seemed very pleased at the way I trotted along. Day after day he did this for a long time, making me go faster and faster until I heard him and other people say that I was going to be a very fast pacer. My lungs expanded with the exercise. My muscles grew firm and strong. My eyes were bright and clear. I had a hearty appetite and enjoyed every mouthful I ate. And every day when they turned me loose in the pasture, I raced up and down just as proud and happy and full of life and exuberant spirits as ever possessed a young horse in all the wide world. One day the judge took me out on what he called a track. It was a smooth oval place, not very wide, arranged solely for the purpose of driving horses. They fastened a light little cart behind me, hardly big enough for my groom to sit in, and then he made me go around the track as hard as I could go. Of course, he let me go easy at first until I, what he called, warmed up, and then he would say, "Now, Sid Bell, go to it." And he would give that peculiar clicking sound that men make when they want a horse to hurry up, and I paced ahead as fast as I knew how. The judge used to come and watch proceedings nearly every day and give suggestions to my groom. Some days he would be very proud and boastful about me, and other times not quite so well satisfied. But one day when I was feeling particularly good and had gone around the track at a lively clip, I heard him say, "He'll do." He made it that time in 2:16, which I afterwards learnt meant that I had paced a mile in 2 minutes and 16 seconds, and was accounted pretty fast for a 2-year-old colt. When I was nearly 3 years old, the judge sold me to Mr. W.A. Sigsbee of Chicago. My mother had told me one day when Mr. Sigsbee came to the track to watch me pace that he was a great animal trainer, known all over the country as Captain Sigsbee. I heard the captain say, "He's a beauty. His action is fine." And when I was brought up to where he and the judge were standing, he repeated these and many other comments, all of a nature to make a young horse like me think a good deal of himself. So that I looked at him and let him know by my eyes that I liked him to speak in that way about me. Then he began to talk about my intelligent look, and all at once he exclaimed quite emphatically, "Judge, I've got to have that colt. I want to train him and make him the best known horse in the world." The judge didn't seem to like this idea very much at first. He said he had trained me for the track and he didn't intend to part with me. But Captain Sigsbee urged so strongly that it would be far better for me to keep away from the track and let me be specially trained and then sent out to the country as an educated horse, that finally he consented to sell me. My mother was very sorry to have me go away from her, and I was sorry to go. But she seemed to find a great deal of comfort in the fact that I should no longer be on the track. I should have a much less strenuous life than racing, and that the education my new owner wished to give me would also be much to my advantage in other ways. So Captain Sigsbee took me to Chicago, and my, what a noisy, bustling city it was. How different from the quiet country where I was born and so far had spent my life. And the smells. Why, I smelled more horrible smells in one day there, I think, than I'd smelled in all my life before. The same with the noise. People think horses don't care about the smells and noises, don't they? I was jumping and nervous all the time with the new and awful noises that seemed to rush at me from every direction. Streetcars roaring, rushing, and their bell clanging. Automobiles honking right in my ears. Wagons rumbling over the stones, men shouting, women and girls talking with high-pitched voices, babies squalling, policemen whistling at the street crossings, newsboys shouting their papers, beggars grinding away on their pitiful little organs, and 1,000 other noises, many of which I had never before heard. As we were crossing one of the streets or avenues, a new noise came rushing at me, as fast as an automobile travels, but it was over my head. I looked up but could see nothing but trestle work above me, and the noise was loud enough to be felt. Nearer it came until with a rush and a roar it seemed to fall on me, and I reared and struggled and even screamed in my terror. Then in a moment the fierce noise of it was gone and gradually grew less and less. But in another street I had the same experience. Captain spoke quietly and soothingly to me and told me I needn't be scared, as it was only the elevated railway. But I didn't know then what he meant. Of course, I learned all about it later, and then I was no longer scared. At the training barn, I had a fine large box stall, the floor covered with clean, sweet-smelling hay where I could lie down and rest whenever I felt like it. My new owner was very kind to me. He came to see me several times a day and brought his friends and told them how proud he was of me. He always brought me an apple, a carrot, a lump of sugar, or something I liked. And I soon watched for his coming and I learned to love him. But I did not like being left alone in that strange place and with so many disagreeable smells and noises around me. When he went away, I tried to beg him not to go. I would nose up to him and even tried to hold him, but he only called me a cunning rascal and broke away. Then I would whinny and paw so that I was sure that if he had any real horse sense, he would surely know what I meant, and that I was telling him so clearly that even a donkey or a mule could understand that I did not want him to leave me alone. But poor creature, he was only a man and didn't have any horse sense, so I was left. When he came again, I showed him by my gladness and the reality of my welcome how glad I was that he had come. One day, while he was away, some rude and noisy men got into a quarrel outside the stable, and they fought, and swore and made an awful noise. One of them fired a gun or a revolver at the other, and the hubbub was terrible. I was dreadfully alarmed, and when the captain came, a little while after, I was lathered all over with the sweat that had poured out of me because I was so afraid. My, he exclaimed as soon as he saw me. This will never do. The poor little fellow is scared almost to death. I'll never leave him alone again. How glad I was to hear that. I kissed him just as I'd learned to kiss my mother and tried to show him my gratitude. He kept his word, and that very night he brought a groom to me, whom he called Chili. He told Chili that he was never to leave me, day or night. He was to be my companion and caretaker. He must not try to teach me or anything of that kind, but just simply see that I had plenty of hay and water and my oats regularly, and an abundance of litter to sleep on, and that I was kept perfectly clean, my stable also clean and sweet, and be with me all the time. That was a great comfort to me. Few people can know how much, for I really believe, now that I'm older, that horses are far more fearful and timid even than women and colts than babies. We're an awfully scary lot. It is too bad, but it is so. And I think that's it for tonight. If you're interested in the story of Captain the Intelligent Horse, you can find the link to the novel on Project Gutenberg in the show notes. Just as a warning though, I did edit out some surprisingly stark racism, particularly in the introduction, so just be aware of that as you go in. Thank you. Thanks again for joining me on this episode of Sleepy Time Tales, the podcast designed around a bedtime story to help you to get a restful night. New episodes will be released every Sunday night to give you something fresh to help you rest in a new week. But make sure to subscribe in whatever service you use so that you get your new episodes whenever they come out. A reminder that the music is Un Désert by Kumiku. Check out more of their work on their website, which you'll find linked in the show notes. Good night and sweet dreams.